Hey everybody, Mark from Rams Up here. I have Scott Richmond with us tonight, and he's another guy kind of just like me, a diehard Ram fan. And Scott has some special insights into players and the Rams roster, so I thought I'd have him on. How you doing, Scott?
Doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's always a lot of fun. Let's get right into it. What I'd like to do is just go through position group by position group. We'll talk about each of these groups. Some of them will go pretty quickly. Others, maybe there could be quite a bit of discussion we can have. And then
hmm
at the end, we'll kind of sum it up about where this team's headed. And there's obviously going to be a couple of moves, probably as soon as tomorrow. But obviously, let's start with quarterback. That's an easy one.
Oh,
We've
yes.
got down to two quarterbacks. Do you think? I guess we knew it was going to be Stafford and Bennett. I predicted Rypien would get cut because that would buy them a couple of days to find maybe improve that backup position.
hmm
How do you feel about that? Were you expecting Rypien to get cut?
I was expecting two quarterbacks to be kept. I think I think with Rippon, I think it would be easily to go get another quarterback in the next few days and stash him on the practice squad. So um, I'm
You
quite
do think
happy
they're going
with the decision.
you do think they're going to add a third though,
I think they might add a third for emergency. I think they're quite
right?
confident with Bennett as the number two.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, they don't need him, and if they
Uh-huh.
do need him, it won't be real soon. Ideally, it'd just be something crazy happens and we need him for to come in for a couple series a few weeks down the road. But I think Matthew Stafford, to me, I just sense that he's just chomping at the bit, ready to get this season going.
Yeah, I think with in combination with his health being on the upside and all the problems they had with the O line last year and the improved depth on the O line, I think he's going to have. I think um, he's going to change some minds about being a top 10 quarterback in the league by midseason. I think.
Yeah, he's just getting no respect lately. And
Mhm.
for those of you viewing on the YouTube channel, a note: if you see the graphics here, what I try to do is highlight the rookies in the shaded green. Hopefully, you can see that, and the newcomers, new to the roster but veterans, are the I don't know what we call that, like a soft yellow there. So I'm trying to differentiate some of these types of players. All 14 draft picks, by the way, made this roster. Okay, let's move on to the running backs. Were you surprised that I heard I think it was the announcer last week was predicting the Rams were going to carry three running backs, and I disagreed with that, and I guess I was right. How did you feel about this group?
Um, I was a little bit surprised that none of the wide receivers really emerged as returners. So the fact that they're going to go with four, I think I think Ron Rivers is probably going to get some more opportunities as a kick returner, and Kyron Williams maybe getting a lot of the reps at punt returners. So that might be the
Right.
reason that they went with four instead of three. But I was a bit surprised that that Rivers beat out is it Freeman. The
Right.
Yeah,
Correct.
I thought with them signing him late in camp that he was a shoe in to be depth.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought maybe, if you're not going to play Akers and you don't want to play Kyron Williams, maybe they're just bringing him in to be, hey, we're going to give you a bunch of carries in the preseason because we have to play somebody. We're not going to have Zach Evans get 30 carries a game. Ronnie Rivers played a bit as well,
Mm-hmm.
but I was kind of pulling for Zach Evans. I just think he has a higher bar, but I do like what Royce Freeman brings as far as that power back element.
Yes, agreed. Zach Evans, my favorite of the group.
Yeah, we'll have to see it. Now, the way I look at it is, and I talked about this on a pod recently, I think Ronnie Rivers is probably I would think of him as Akers' backup and Kyron Williams as kind of a wingman, Swiss Army knife, return game, third down running back, that sort of
Mhm.
thing. In other
Yeah,
words,
no,
I don't know if,
definitely.
yeah, I'm not sure Rivers will even see the field that often, but we'll see. I could be wrong on that. Now, the tight end group, what
Mhm.
I was wrong on the tight end group, although keep in mind, I think, we'll get to it in a little bit, but I think there's going to be someone on this roster, probably on the offensive side of the ball, is going to get cut in the next few days, is my prediction. And it could be a tight end, it could be an offensive lineman, but I was surprised that they kept all four of them at this point. How do you feel about it?
Same with you. I was surprised they went with four on the initial 53 roster. I thought that either um, that Hunter Long or Davis Allen might start the season on get cut and come onto the practice squad. But the fact that they kept Hunter Long, even with his injury, that he really didn't play at all in camp and preseason, I was very surprised that they kept him and both. Um, the kid from Clemson, Davis Allen.
Right, Davis Allen. Yeah, we'll have to see. I think it's mainly going to be Higby and Hopkins, anyways. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think there's a move coming, and we just can only guess what the Rams are thinking at this point.
Yeah,
But four tight.
if I could, can I chime in there on the time at tight ends really quick?
Oh, sure.
Mentioning that I did go to training camp, I'd have to say if there was two or three things that to some highlights that I can mention is that Hopkins' emergence was definitely obvious on the field. It seems like he has, how would you say, he's graduated to a higher level of. Um, he
Yeah,
seems to have gone from junior varsity to varsity. His work ethic has really paid off. He was really night and day difference on the practice field when I went to training camp compared to before his first two seasons. So I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised by his
yeah, and
improvement.
he showed glimpses of that, and during their Super Bowl run, he was a real contributor. And
Yeah.
that's the one thing the Rams have in the bag here. I think more so than a lot of other teams, they bring along some young guys really slowly. And the initial reaction from a lot of Ram fans, including me, I'm guilty of it, is that, oh, this guy must not be very good. Yeah, Bobby Brown, Bryson Hopkins, Kyron Williams.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're wrong about that and they're actually ready to contribute, it happened with Greg Gaines, right? Greg Gaines barely
Mm-hmm.
played his rookie year. That could be something the Rams are leaning on, and maybe this team's gonna be a little bit more competitive than people think because of that. You're a
Yes.
Bryson Hopkins fan. That's good to know.
Yes.
I think I had read that somewhere else. Someone else called that out too. That he looked like. I think it actually might have been Sean McVay actually mentioned that they asked him to name one player who has really stepped up, and he mentioned Bryson Hopkins.
Yes.
Now the wide receiver group at the end there, as I was whittling down my 53-man roster, I thought if there would be seven, but if they were going to carry six, the guy at risk might be Demarcus Robinson, and it was Tyler Johnson. So they're rolling with Cup, Jefferson, Atwell, Skowronek, Nakua. Those were all pretty much givens, I think. And then Demarcus Robinson and no Tyler Johnson. Were you surprised by that?
Not really. It was going to be either Robinson or Johnson. I think Robinson was probably a little bit more consistent over the whole camp. I believe, at least the practices that I saw, he was in the running game. He had his nose in as a blocker. He seemed to be able to run most of the routes without having to get pulled aside. He knew I guess what I'm saying is he knew the route tree. He knew the playbook pretty well for being a first year Rams player. So,
Yeah, and sometimes for fans like me, it's so difficult to interpret preseason games too, because Demarcus Robinson was out there a lot on
mm-hmm.
against the Broncos. And
Mhm.
I think he had some targets. I don't know if he had any receptions. He looked like he was really struggling, but it may have been actually the quarterback that was struggling. So, unless you know the play call and the play design and you can see the whole play unfold, it's really hard to
Mhm.
make judgments on based on what we're seeing on the TV screen, right?
Yes.
Now, the
Tutu-
offense, go ahead.
I was just going to say Tutu Atwell in similarly to Hopkins. He's kind of graduated, and he can run all the routes from all the different positions. And I think the coaches and the quarterbacks have a lot more confidence in him. So I think people are going to be surprised at how much he'll be able to play.
Yeah,
This,
that would be so big for this offense to add that element, you
Mhm.
know. And I think maybe McVay has been hesitant to get Tutu involved because he can't help in the running game as much as some of the other guys.
Right.
But you give up that element. But if he can stretch the field, he's going to help the running game in that way, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
even on
going to be
long
fun.
crossing routes, he has the speed to really. No cornerback can cover him if there's a play action play and they use a lot of those deep zone crosses. He's perfect for that because he has got the best speed on the team.
Yeah, that's the other thing I keep on telling people that ask me is, what about the Rams this year? They underline the thread of being that they're not going to be very good, are they? And I just keep on telling them, everyone that asks, I don't know, but this offense could be special like it was a couple of years ago.
Yes.
But I could be wrong. We'll have to see. They need to do it on the field, obviously. Okay, now the offensive line, we saw a lot of things going on there. They trade for Dotson, and then they cut Logan Bruss, and right now they have 10 offensive linemen: Alaric
Mhm.
Jackson, Steve Avila, um, Brian Allen, Coleman Shelton, Tremaine Ankrum, Havenstein, Dotson, Noteboom, Zach Thomas is still there, and
Mhm.
Warren McClendon. And I sense that I'll be surprised if they end up with 10 on opening day. Do you agree?
Um, I think they'll go with at least 10. Where there's 11 as of today, right?
I thought there was 10, but you think you won't be surprised if they carry 10 or possibly even 11?
Yeah, I think today I just lost my page that I was on, but I think they did have 11. I think I can't find it. Yeah, with the young one. Oh, I just lost track of his name.
Warren
Um,
McClendon?
no, McClendon is one of the draftees. The other young guy
Right.
that was
Oh,
undrafted,
Zach Thomas.
Zach Thomas. Yeah, he made. I
Right.
think he's the 11th. Um, he was kind of surprising that they kept. I thought he would be a cut and then try to bring back on the practice squad, but I guess that could happen anytime in the next couple of weeks if they find other players. They could easily drop him and put him on the
Yeah,
practice.
it's probably a good time to jump into that. The roster manipulations that are going to have to occur. What I understand is, well, they have 53 right now. They had to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ochaun Mathis, they kept on the 53. So they can put him on the IR as early as tomorrow, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's eligible to return. They waited because of that reason. So that'll get him down to 52. We'd assume that, well, they're going to have to add a kicker. So that would get him back up to 53. And my guess is they would still cut a tight end or an offensive lineman and add a QB3. That's just my hunch. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I would do if I was Les Snead. Now, who they cut, your guess is as good as mine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's roll into the defense, and we'll start with the defensive line. Typically, the last couple of years, they've carried 6 defensive linemen. They start the season with 7: Aaron Donald, Bobby Brown, Kobe Turner, um, Laurel Murchison, Ernest Brown, Jonah Williams, and the rookie Deshaun Johnson. 2 rookies, actually, Turner and Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Carrying 7. How do you feel about this unit? What do you think? What do you think the starting three is going to look like? Assuming they go with the three-man front, I know they run four out there sometimes. Do you have a feel for what they're going to do with this defensive line?
They're going to have to rotate a lot. They're a little thin in the shorts, if you know what I mean.
Right,
Bobby Brown's the only true nose tackle right now,
right.
and he really didn't play consistently in preseason. So this position group is one of my concerns. Um, I
I think
just
it's everybody's. I think it's
yeah,
everybody's at this point.
I just don't know if they go up against the like Seattle week one. Seattle really likes to run the ball. It's really going to be a test. I mean, they could possibly give up 200 yards rushing on opening day, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of pessimism about this defense in that regard. And what I'm hoping is, if Bobby Brown's the nose tackle playing in the interior and Aaron Donald's out there, I assume Kobe Turner will get a lot of snaps. And then you throw one of these other guys, maybe run some four-man fronts out there. I'm no
Mhm.
defensive coordinator. I'm no expert on Paul Wally. We've had on a few times. He's really good with this stuff. But I know they've done that in the past against heavy run teams. I know uh, that opening series against the 49ers in the championship game a couple years ago. They had
Mhm.
four defensive linemen and Leonard Floyd and Von Miller up there as well. Pretty formidable six-man front, really, if you count the edge guys. So I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that. But
I'm sure.
I feel I have the same concern as you. Absolutely. I
Yes.
did like how Murchison played at the end of last year. He's a guy that maybe
Hmm.
we don't give enough credit. But the Marquise Copeland cut, I saw it coming because he was out there late in the fourth quarter against the Broncos. But I'm still kind of shocked.
Hmm. Yes.
So let's go on to the edge and talk about a young group. We got, if you count Mathis, four rookies. Well, Van Valkenburg's actually not a rookie. He's a second-year guy. Didn't get on the
Yeah.
field a lot last year, though. But you have Young, Hampton, Mathis, Van Valkenburg. I love that name, by the way.
Yep.
And Michael Hoyt. So I'm sure it's going to be they're relying on Hoyt and Young. And I have a really good feeling about Byron Young. Just need to see it on the field, right?
Yeah. I think when I saw him in training camp, he seemed to do a fairly good enough job of holding his own, setting the edge in the run game. He didn't seem to get overwhelmed. I went and saw the first game against the Chargers at SoFi, and he seemed to do a pretty good job holding his own against the run. I think his pass rush is going to be is going to take a
A
while
work
for it to
a
catch up.
work in progress, maybe.
Progress, yes. So whatever pressures they get out of him in the first part of the year will be icing on the cake. As long as he can hold that edge in the run game, I think he's going to be fine.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what their defensive strategy is. Are they going to do some blitzing, or are they just going to lay back and force these teams into 12, 13 play drives and force
Mhm.
field goals like they have recently? But I did hear, I don't know if you heard the quote by the announcers quoting one of the Raider coaches from the joint practices on Byron Young saying, I'm going to get this partially wrong, but he's a
Mhm.
rookie and he may be wrong a lot of times, but man, he sure is violent. So the Raiders were impressed,
Yes,
but yeah, may take some time.
he'll be
He
good.
inside, yeah, I think he's going to be a good player. It may just take some time. And Van Valkenburg could be, he could be a guy that really he's going to be a big special teams contributor for sure.
Mhm.
And Hampton probably the same thing. Anything we get from them, those guys on the defensive, as far as defensive snaps, will be icing on the cake. And
Mhm.
Ochaun Mathis, who knows? He's going to be a project.
Mhm. Right, I agree.
So on the inside linebacker group, really we just have the three guys, and it's the same three guys. Well, last year we had these three guys and Bobby Wagner.
Hmm.
Now, the difference is, I love Ernest Jones, and I think Roseboom and Hummel are. as everybody, I've heard it like 5 or 6 times. They're Troy Reader point 2.0 basically. They know how to tackle. They know how to tackle, and that's important. But they may not be anything special. But I've been reading. I've read a couple places that Quentin Lake could actually play a significant role sneaking up into the box. I don't know if
Mhm.
you'd call him a hybrid linebacker, but I predicted 3 linebackers because of Quentin Lake. How do you feel
Mhm.
about that? How do you feel about this linebacker group? Obviously, a little thin. Um, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's fine because I think Jones is going to play, 90% of the snaps. Um, Rosaboom will be primarily a run stopper. He'll be in there on first and long, second and long, and as soon as it's a shorter down and distance, he's out of the game, I believe.
Right.
Um, Hummel may be a backup. He may be in on nickel packages, but that game that I saw at SoFi in the first quarter, Quentin Lake he came in on second and long and third and long as the nickel linebacker,
Oh, okay.
block
Yeah. So
safety,
we'll see.
however. So I can't say how many safeties, but I think they almost had 3 safeties on the field in some of those second and long, third and long situations.
Yeah. And
So
Quentin Lake's another guy who got on the field late last year. I don't think he was ever 100% healthy. So he's
mhm,
another guy that he could surprise us.
yes.
Okay, we'll go to the cornerbacks, and I don't think there are really any surprises. I think a lot of people were pretty much done with Robert Rochelle, and um, I hate to see the guy go, but he's had his chances. And
Hmm.
Trey Tomlinson, to me, he looks like a dynamite 6th round draft pick. And Sean Jolly, he has stuck around one more year. And then you
Hmm.
got Durant and Kendrick, the 2 draft picks from last year, and then Witherspoon, who they added as a free agent. I think
Yeah.
this group could be actually pretty good. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about this 5 corner?
Uh, I think the only one I'm surprised about is Jolly. I really didn't see anything in training camp that showed him to be capable of running with the first team. Now that he's made the team, I'm still not too sure. The player that I was kind of disappointed in that got cut was Jordan Jones, the kid from Rhode Island. He got a lot of
Right.
playing time in that first game with the Chargers. And boy, I watched him a lot. He was always in position. He seemed to have his head screwed on straight with his how would you say, his responsibility on the field. He wasn't out of
Discipline.
position. He had good discipline. He always made a tackle. He gave up a couple of pass plays, but he was covering a much taller tight end. So I think he's somebody that's going to come back on the practice squad. I think he could be somebody that could be playing with the ones later in the season if they keep him on the practice squad.
Yeah, the guy I thought might make it similar to Jordan Jones, and I liked him too, was Cameron McCutcheon. I thought he had a shot. He's a
Mm-hmm.
bigger cornerback, but yeah, I think it has to have been between Jolly and those two, I think, to make this final roster. And Durant,
Mm-hmm.
he like he could be special. One of those guys that makes splash plays. You know, really good in the if he gets his hands on the ball, exciting things happen. Darion Kendrick, I think, as Tom Courts pointed out multiple times, I think he got thrown into the fire probably earlier than he should have last year, so we shouldn't give up on him. And Witherspoon, a lot of people seem to like him. He's a bigger cornerback, and we needed that. So
Mm-hmm.
this group could be okay, but Tomlinson, he could be something special. He's a really exciting player.
Yes, agreed.
Okay, let's move on to the safeties. And I don't know if there were really any surprises here either. It was really down to that 5th safety. We have Fuller, Johnson, Yeast, and Lake. And then Jason Taylor was a draft pick, a 7th round draft pick. And
Mm-hmm.
my take on it is he beat out Rashad Torrance and Quindell Johnson. I thought Quindell Johnson had a real shot at making this roster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was a bit surprised that Taylor made it. I think the only reason I'm surprised is that I didn't see him really get any snaps at the safety position with either the ones or the twos during training camp or preseason. I haven't found out today that he's been injured. I didn't even know that he's probably going to be waived, be put on IR, I think
Oh,
tomorrow,
really?
just
Oh,
like
well,
Mathis, possibly.
oh,
So
okay. So then they're probably going to bring back, I would think they bring back a fifth safety, maybe not. Okay.
yeah, I'm not too sure because I've been a lot of people on social media have been fans of Taylor, and because he's a Ram, I don't want to knock him, but I question what people saw in him. It's like, I think they drafted him for special teams. I think he's going to be a great gunner and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so forth. But I don't know if I would want him on the back end being the last guy to make a games saving tackle to stop a touch.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the take. Me and you may have talked about that when we did when we had our last conversation
I
following the
think we did,
draft.
yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, that he has a record of not being the greatest tackler in the open field, but he is a
Mm-hmm.
good special teams player. Um, yeah, I was surprised that Quindell Johnson did not make this team. I thought he had earned it, but hey, I don't know what goes on in camp day to days and those study halls and all that,
Mm-hmm.
but they like Jason Taylor, and hopefully, like you say, we won't see him on the defensive side of the ball, just on special teams. But their top four are pretty solid. And again, this is what people forget about. They talk about, worried about this defense, and I get it. But, Jordan Fuller and John Johnson have both played at an extremely high level. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, maybe just a little bit short of a Pro Bowl level. They in their primes before Jordan Fuller was injured. I think it was in the final game of the season against the 49ers the year prior to maybe it was their Super Bowl
It was
run.
the Super Bowl season, yeah.
Right. He got hurt in the third or fourth quarter, and Taylor Rapp, I think, got hurt too. And that's when the 49ers came back. Jordan Fuller
Mm-hmm.
was one of the better safeties in the conference. And he's coming back with John Johnson. And John Johnson is he's a solid, maybe a solid but unspectacular safety. And then I really liked Russ Yeast last year. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
really good group back there. And our secondary could be better than people think. I guess is what I'm hoping, what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I think it'll be stronger than we think. It's going to be the front seven that I think might cause the most problems.
Right.
So,
If we can get to the quarterback and can we stop the run, and maybe they're going to have to be a little more creative than in
mm-hmm.
years past. Okay, I'm not going to say I saved the best for last, special teams. I think I've been saying it over and over again. I love our punter, Alex Ward. I don't think we've had any issues with the snapper. The kicker, his problems are on him, from what I can tell. And right
Mm-hmm.
now, so because of that, we don't have a kicker, and that's worrisome too. I wanted Tanner Brown to hit a couple of 40-yarders, and we roll into Seattle with some confidence. And now
Mm-hmm.
uh, we're going to be biting fingernails. And when whoever our kicker is, whoever runs out there, it's going to be a little scary.
Yeah, it's
Are there
true.
any kickers out there that you know of that would be? I know that Potter was cut by the Steelers. He's the Clemson kicker that was highly rated. And then I know there's a bunch of kickers out there. People trying to trade for various kickers and such. But I don't know what the Rams are going to do here.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Blankenship from the Buccaneers he was cut earlier in the week. Rodrigo, the one with the black glasses,
Oh, right.
from Georgia, and then the other kid who was drafted by one of the Ohio teams. I can't remember. He was just
Oh,
elected too.
yeah, Cleveland's kicker from two. They drafted him last year, I think. Is it York? I forget his
Or
name.
York, that's it. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And then Brett Maurer, and he's the guy the Broncos cut, but he really struggled last year. He missed He's the one that missed 4 extra points in one game. I think it was
Mhm.
last year.
Oh, wow.
So, or was it the preseason? I'm not sure, but he had a really bad day. Brett Maurer had a really
Yeah.
bad day. And then there's Robbie Good. I don't know if he's on the market or not. The 49ers walked away from
Mhm.
him, and they have kicker issues too.
Mhm. Yes.
So I guess if looking at this 53-man roster, I think, well, actually ask you another question. What do you think about, are there any quarterbacks you think the Rams should go after? A guy like Will Greer, perhaps. The Cowboys released him. Is there anybody on your radar that
Mm.
would be a good candidate for their emergency quarterback until Stetson Bennett is ready?
That's a good question. I haven't really made that a it hasn't been any interest on my end of that position. Since they drafted Bennett, I was been pretty confident with that position group. I think if he's given the let's say if he's given the reps with the first team and a week's preparation for any
Different
team
story.
during the season, I think he's going to be good. I think a lot of the um, I think a lot of the crap that he took this past week on social media is I don't think people see the context. I don't think they realize that the quarterbacks coach was called some really questionable plays during that game where he threw a pick. 3rd and 17, he had the receiver just run a comeback route against the zone defense. Maybe he
Yeah,
shouldn't have thrown the ball, but that wasn't a recipe for success.
yeah.
And then he's playing with his third string teammates against the Broncos second team. And so, he could probably make better decisions, but I feel he's only shown that he's always been able. He's very resilient and can come back after um, going through a learning experience. So I'm still pretty confident with Bennett. I'd like to roll with him.
That's good perspective. You made me feel a little bit better.
Mhm.
Anyways, um, let me ask you this: do you think should we read in anything into this Kevin Dotson trade with respect to the starting offensive line? Do you think he's actually just a pure backup at this point? Think the Rams are going to make a move? Maybe try to move Noteboom or Ankrum? I don't know. Do you think Dotson's just a security blanket for that interior offensive line?
I don't know. I think there's something bigger going on there because I think we may have discussed this just for a second in our last after the draft. We talked about we're talking about drafting offensive linemen. How McVay and Snead talked about they wanted to do something similar to the what the Saints had, and they had two stalwart guards that protected Drew Brees, and that's what they wanted when they kind of mentioned something about Avila, McClendon, and who was the other one, Noteboom, like having all three of them there as a wall to protect Stafford. So I think they really want to. I think they see Noteboom as that right guard with Avila at the left, but I think they're hedging their bets. They're not too sure whether Noteboom's going to be able to be healthy enough to do that. And I think Dotson is he's Plan B, so that if Noteboom can't be that guy, that Dotson's going to be that guy, and then maybe Noteboom gets moved in a trade, maybe possibly.
Yeah, I think you might be right, and I was trying to, the thing that stood out to me was a couple people mentioned it on Twitter that the Rams they have not drafted big offensive linemen, and they go and draft Avila and trade for Dotson, and these are two behemoth guards, which
Yes.
typically are not the best for that that pulling zoned blocking scheme that they like to run. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe a change in philosophies in the making here. What you mentioned, protecting Stafford, making sure he is protected, but maybe a little bit more of a power running attack at times. We'll have to see.
Yeah. They are moving. I like McVay that he's changing. He's mixing up some of their run game instead of just that wide zone all the time. They're bringing in they're running trap plays where the tackle will pull into the opposite opposite side of the guard and pull into the A or the B gap, and so are the receivers and or tight ends. So you're going to see a lot more trap plays, I think, during the season, utilizing the size of those tackles and guards as opposed to
And
just wide zone runs. So
yeah, and getting Tutu Atwell involved. I think he may be starting to realize the Rams have become predictable on offense at times.
mhm.
And that's the other thing they have going for them. I think some of the opposition may be maybe not quite sure what to prepare for, especially early in the
Mhm.
season. And that's one
Yeah.
of the advantages of the Rams' approach to the preseason. They give nothing away. They give absolutely nothing away.
Mhm.
I mean, I think over the first preseason game or two, I think there were 16 potential starters that didn't play. I counted. So
Yes.
we got to be careful predicting all doom and gloom at this point. I understand some people look at this roster and all these rookies and all these youngsters, and I get it why they would be, um, not very hopeful. But that's just not in my nature. I'm still hoping this team can be pretty competitive.
Mhm.
So, do you have a prediction before we finish up here? What is your prediction for this team?
Mm,
Um,
Mine is mixed. Mine is I'm going to say 8-9 for the season. I think it's going to start off pretty bad. I think we're going to start 0-2. I think we're going to be 2-6 after the first 8 games, and we're going to finish strong 6-3 on the back half and end up at 8-9.
Yeah, that's very reasonable. I think just going into Seattle, where we have played well at times, going into Seattle and getting a win in that first game would be just gigantic. And because
Mhm.
after that, what they get the 49ers, then they travel to Cincinnati. So that's a tough, that's a tough road.
Mhm.
I'm
Yes.
predicting 9-8, and the reason I kind of go along with what some others have said. I still think Matthew Stafford's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC for
Mhm.
sure. I think Sean McVay is one of the best coaches in the league, and
Yes.
Aaron Donald and Cooper Kupp are two just incredible players. Um, and I just hope the youngsters rally around him and grow up real fast, and we get to 9-8. But
Mhm.
hey, we're just guessing at this point, aren't we?
Yes.
It's gonna come down to 2 or 3 games, that break for them or break against them. I think.
Mhm.
Okay, Scott. Thanks for your perspective. I think
Yes.
it's been a lot of fun with this. This is actually one of the funner days of the year when they announce this 53-man roster. But I think there's some changes coming. And so buckle up, Ram fans. We're not done here. I think they're going to add a couple guys. A couple guys are going to go on IR, like you talked about, and there could be a couple of cuts as well. So got to keep an eye on this roster and find a kicker, please. We need a kicker. That's probably the most important thing. We find a kicker that we can count on going into week 1.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, Scott, thanks a lot. I appreciate your time, and we'll do this again. Sometime in the season, I'll have you back and we'll talk Rams football. How about that?
Sounds great, Mark. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Out here.